Hello, I am Chris. Welcome to TMR Now. Today we're going to be looking at the wrist, and in particular, finding ways to strengthen the wrist, particularly in weight bearing. So, first of all, I'm sure like some of you've experienced being in, say, a 4-point kneel and being sore in the wrist. And there are two ways to look into this. One is to use props to offload the wrist, but sometimes that may not be the most functional thing. So maybe strengthening all the muscles and the joints around the wrist will be another option. Let's see how we go. Let's first start in a 4-point kneel. And this will just be more about creating a baseline for how your wrist is feeling before we do all the work. You can even start by curling and arching your spine. And even sense how like your wrist and your hand, how that translates to how your shoulders are involved in the movement. Then you can go into a plank. So slide one leg back, slide the other leg back, either holding in the plank or just shifting your weight forward and back. How does that feel? How much weight do you feel in your wrists? How do you feel in your shoulders? There's your baseline. Okay. Let's get to the work. So, well, we'll go back into the 4-point kneel. But this time, you're going to start by just adding variations. So, palm up, palm down, in all different angles that the wrist can be explored. So just improvise. Good. Let's go back to the first position. Ideally, let's have index finger parallel to one another. And then you're going to go into a circle. And thinking more about kind of gently loading into all the different areas around the wrist. What I'll also say is, if you haven't done things like this before, don't overload it too much. Now we'll reverse. So there are two ways to look at it. One is like, you can look at creating a different experience. If you're feeling like your wrist is sore, can you change something to offload that a little bit? And then if not, if that still doesn't work, maybe that's enough for you today. And then progress it from there. Okay, so now the next movement, I'm going to face this way now. You're going to start, I'm going to roll my sleeves up, and here's the eye of my elbow. So you want to have your arm straight, and all I'm going to do is spiral out from my upper arm, so the eye of the elbow is forward, and then back, and then repeat. So typically when eye of the elbow is forward, we're going more towards hyperextension, and then easing out of that. We try to drive the movement from the upper arm. Now we're going to keep the eye of the elbow forward. So for the next drills, we're going to stay in hyperextension, just being mindful of that. And then you're going to try to lift your thumbs off the floor. That's as much as I'm going to do. And then down. And let's do this about 10 times. So see if you can lift your thumb up without rolling to the outside of the hand. So index finger knuckle down as your thumb lifts. Maybe it's just a feeling of it being lighter. And you want to try to do this and keep the eye of the elbow forward. Now, thumb stays up. Now we'll go into wrist push-ups. Or we're going to lift up to the first knuckles rather. So lifting up to here, stay on the eye of the elbow forward and down. I don't know if you can see my forearms already shaking. So we lift 2, 3, and down 2, 3. What tends to happen is when things get difficult for this one, we lose that outward spiral. Try to maintain that. Good. We'll just do one more. Very good. clasping your hands, and then just move the wrist. Circles. We're going to do that again, and you have two options. One is to stay in the 4-point kneel. One might give more than two options. So you can stay here with your hips over your knees. You can actually move it in closer to put less weight in that movement. Or I'm going to go with the third option, which is to go into the plank. Let's see. Actually, I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to send the knees a little bit further away. And then let's go again. Lift, 2, 3, and down. 2, 3. So let's do 6 more here. I'm watching that the eye of the elbow stays forward, which is easier on my right than it is on my left today. Some of these are borrowed from old handstand drills. And down. Excellent. Circle the wrist again. Both directions. Okay. Now you're going to rest onto your fists. Face this way again. And you'll start by rolling forward. So you're going to be loading onto the outside of the wrist, shifting your shoulders forward with it. And then as you go back, you roll onto the inside of the wrist and then do a push-up. And then repeat. Actually, let me inside of the wrist as we go forward, outside as we go down. So we're kind of systematically loading into all aspects of the wrist so that practically we are strong in all directions. I'm going to bring my knees back for the last 5 just to increase the load. And 2. Whoop. And 1. Okay, next movement, you're going to try to rest on all of your fingertips. You're going to press your fingertips inwards and create a suctioning feeling under the heel of your hand. So let's start here. In the 4-point kneel, make sure your shoulders are over your hands. So you can be here. Knees can be further back if you want to increase that. And let's hold here together. Breathe in and breathe out. And in and out. 2 more breaths. And out. And in and out. Good. Excellent. Now we go a little bit more into stretching all the muscles around the top of the wrist. So you're going to start by creating a fist here. Pressing the knuckles together and then try to straighten your elbows as much as you can. That's as far as I'm going to go. And then repeat. Fold and then find that deep stretch. And down. Good. Let's do 2 more. Stretch, find the stretch. Ease out of the stretch. Once more. Very good. Stretching the underside of the forearm, which is actually a great stretch to do if you're doing a lot of typing during the day. You're going to start by pressing your 4 fingertips, so the one minus the thumb, into the floor. And then you're going to bend your elbow and try to bring it in towards this leg as a reference point, and then take it away. So if you take your knees back, then that will increase the stretch here. So you always want to go back to that reference point and then back. And then if you feel like you're okay doing that, just go increase the range. And 3. It's probably a little bit far for me. And 2. And 1. Perfect. Feel the circulation come into that hand, and then let's go to the other side 10 times. 1 and 2. If any of these are of value, you may find, out of all of these things, one feels better, or maybe is more challenging for you, but you see the value in it. Maybe you add a second or a third set. That's okay too. And last one. Very good. Go back into your 4-point kneel. And maybe now, make sure index fingers are parallel, and that here we're not hyperextending the elbows. You can even get the sense of pulling the mat apart with your hands so that the shoulders are broad on the back, and then do some cat-cows. You can even add the feeling of your fingertips pressing down to create the arch under your hand in the similar way that your foot has arches. How does that feel compared to how you started? Now let's go into the 4-point kneel just to finish off. And thinking more here about, well, can we maintain a breadth in the shoulders or the shoulder blades on the back? And how heavy do your wrists feel on the floor? So here's me feeling very heavy, all my weight going down. Can I find a way to make that a little bit lighter by pressing the floor away? Okay. That's the exploration of the wrist strengthening. I hope you enjoyed. See you soon.